We're going to start with the continuing the Mishnah and Sota on Membet Amud Aleph, okay? And I will screen it to us, okay? And we'll do it together, okay? Okay, I just have to change from my previous shiur, okay? We're moving now to Mishnah Sota, okay? We'll go over here. Okay, we're on Sota Membet. Okay, let's start, okay? And we'll put the English, okay? Here we go. Okay, so we learned that yesterday, the Mishnah describing how we take the words that the Kohen says in the Torah, and on the one hand, we emphasize to them that the battle is against our enemies. On the one hand, like we're scaring them more. We're saying to them, wow, they're so cruel, your enemies. Instead of calming them down, we're like increasing the anxiety. On the other hand, we're trying to tell the Golda Meir story that we know that we cannot lose. That's our secret weapon. So you have to know who you're fighting. If you don't know who you're fighting, you don't know how to do it properly. Okay, so that's what the Mishnah did over there. And they brought the story of the war with Pekach ben Remaliah and Achaz. And then we learned yesterday how the Torah, how Chazal take the four descriptions of fear and how they tried to describe how they actually describing different actions of armies, which all of them go to the same point. The noise, the power, the strength of the army. Again, like it's the same thing. We're increasing the fear. You know who you're fighting. Wow! But don't be afraid. Okay? You know why you shouldn't be afraid? Ki Hashem. Now I'm continuing. This is new material. Ki Hashem Elokechem, Haolech Imachem. This is the full pasuk. You're familiar with it because we say it in Tfilah L'Shlom Chayalei Tzahal, right? Ki Hashem Elohechem holech imachem nilachem lechem im oivechem lo'shia itchem. So a drasha, a medrash, takes the pasuk in different parts of it. It explains, it expands through other psukim. So now we're going on the beginning of the pasuk. Ki Hashem Elokechem holech imachem, and look what they say. Hein ba'im b'nitzchono shel basar v'adam. Meaning our enemies, when they come to the battle, so they come, the champions, look at the English translation. If you like it, by flesh and blood. They're coming by might and power of their army. That's how I would translate it. Vatem ba'im b'nitzchono shel makom. You are not coming in the name of how strong you are. You are coming in the name of Hashem Elokechem, of your linkage to the Kodesh Baruch Hu. And before we'll explain that, listen what they say. Plishtim ba'u. They're going, as in previous part of the Mishnah, to bring biblical examples. Let's see, in Tanakh, wars that we see how our enemies were sure that they will win the battle because of their might and power. פלישתים באו בניצחונו של גוליית, מה היה סופו? לסוף נפל בחרב ונפלו עמו. בני עמון באו בניצחונו של שובח, מה היה סופו? לסוף נפל בחרב ונפלו עמו. ואתם, אי אתם כן. What is the Darshan doing here in the Mishnah? He's bringing two biblical battles. One of them you're very familiar with, right? Goliath and David happened not far from where we live, not far from Beit Shemesh. Really, if we take that battle, I mean, Goliath was so powerful and mighty. I mean, everybody was afraid to fight him until came little David, was ready to fight him. So that's a very good and clear example of how what makes the difference in a war is not only how strong you are, but something else. But I would like to ask out loud, I don't have a good answer. Did you ever hear of the War of Shovach? Did you ever hear of that? What was that war exactly? Okay. So it's a war also of David HaMelech. And maybe that's the hint why they brought that war. Okay, if we try to find who is Shovach. So it takes us, as you see here, to Shmuel Bet, chapter 10. Okay, so we will go there. Okay, let's open. Uh, we'll open over here Mikra Dolot. We'll go to Nevi'im, Shmuel Bet. Perek Yud, to remind ourselves so we can understand what's going on here. You have to remember the structure of Shmuel Bet. David HaMelech, he's crowned in the beginning of Shmuel Bet. He thinks that he settled down everything. He brings the ark to Yerushalayim. He wants to build Beit HaMikdash. And what does the Navi, Natan the Navi, say to him? No, 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 that's not your job. And then he has more wars. Now, the truth is, there's something very strange about those psukim. The psukim say David wanted to build Beit HaMikdash because it's all over, right? Hashem iniach lo mikol oivav misaviv. And then he tells him, no, no, it's not time for you to build Beit HaMikdash. Uh, your son will do it, and then he has more wars. But you said before he finished all the wars. So it's very simple. I mean, to explain it, this is what Chazal differentiate between Milchemet Mitzvah and Milchemet Reshut. It's not that David actually thought it's all over, but David thought he stabilized the kingdom. He thought that he did the central part, and it would seem also that he thought that his son will also continue fighting. That's what he thought. What When he was told, no, 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 you will not build Beit HaMikdash, he basically realized that he has a role of finishing the job of stabilizing the kingdom. He has to take care of more tasks of war, and his son will not be a warrior, a fighter. His son will be the builder of Beit HaMikdash. And David then goes and he has wars with the surrounding enemies. That's what David has, and one of them is Shovach. I'll show it to you now. It says over here in Shmuel Bet how David has a war with the Bnei Ammon, with the children of Ammon. There's a description there how David sends messengers, what happens. And then Yoav sees clear that he has to have a war. Now, maybe here is the answer to it. What happens? David hears that Bnei Ammon want to have a war with David. Look, it says the following, and when the children of Ammon saw that they had become abhorrent to David. The children of Ammon sent and hired the Arameans of Bet Rehov and Aram Tzova, meaning they brought a coalition. If it sounds familiar to you, they brought more armies. They were very strong. You know, when the Iranians planned their vicious plans against us, they wanted to have their proxies attack us at one time. That's what happens over here. Look at it. It's not only Bnei Ammon fighting us. They brought Aram Tzova, and then they brought Melech Ma'acha, okay, the king of Ma'acha, and they brought also Ish Tov, and together David said is one little tzal, okay, it's one little army with Yoav. It would seem very clearly, look at this, that Yoav and the Giborim against Bnei Ammon, Aram Tova, Rechov, Ish Tov, Macha. Look at the description. Vayar Yoav. What does Yoav see? That the war is mipanim u'me'achor. It's from in, back and against him, front and behind. Okay. So what did he need? He needed like a commando. He needed heroes who would have the courage, so much our boys, to go through. So what does he do? Vayivchar mikol bachorei Yisrael ve'aroch likrat aram. Okay, he chose like the elite commando, and the rest of the arm he gave to his brother Avshai. Other places called Avishai. And what did he say? We'll help each other. Okay. And then he said the most famous pasuk, which is a lot of quoted today. He was like in stress. He clearly realized that he's inferior to his enemies. They were much stronger than him. And then he says, Chazak v'nitchazak ba'ad Ameinu u'v'ad arei Eloheinu v'Adonai yaseh atov be'inav. This pasuk goes a lot in my thoughts in the past year and a half. We will do our best. We will be chazak v'nit chazak for Am Yisrael, Ba'ad Ameinu, and for the cities of Am Yisrael, of God. And Kosh Baruch Hu will see our efforts, and he'll do his best. Now this exactly matches what we are describing in the parsha of Kohen Meshuach Milchama. What do we describe in Parshat Kohen Meshuach Milchama? There's a stronger army than us against us. Sus v'rechev am rav mimcha, right? And don't be afraid, Hashem Elokecha imach. You do your best. Chazak v'nitchazak, ba'ad Ameinu v'ad arei Eloheinu, v'Hashem yaseh atov be'einav. Hashem will be with you. That's what happens there. Yoav goes, and Aram starts running away. When Bnei Ammon see that The Aram ran away. They also run away. You could take that to what's happening with us, okay? Hamas, Hezbollah, I don't know. And then what happens? But then they decide to gather again together. Like they retook themselves. Vayar Aram ki nigaf. The Armenians saw that they were smitten before Israel. They gathered themselves together. And then what do? They resend that strong army, this coalition. וישלח Hadadezer ויוצא את ארם אשר מעבר הנהר ויבואו חילם. Okay, Hadadezer sends and brings the Armenians that beyond the river. Like they don't have a border with us, right? Does it sound familiar? And they send Shobach, who's the chief, he's the Nasrallah of those days, okay? Like he's the chief commander, And what happens? Vayugad David. So David hears about it and he gathers his army together, okay? And he puts them to fight. And what happens? Vayanos Aram. Arameans fled before Am Israel, okay? And David and his army kills 700 Rechev. The Rechev talks to our Parsha in Mishuach Milchama. What does it say in Mishuach Milchama? Sus v'Rechev am rav mimcha. You see it? Remember we can press Rechev and say the concordance? Okay. So we are now in Shmuel Bet. Okay, we're in this Rechev, okay? And we go to ours, okay? So Imam Shovach talks with our Parsha, okay? And then what happens? Vayiru et Shovach sar tzva'o hikav vayamot sham. So the story of Shovach, let's conclude. I think it was a story of a very strong coalition of armies against David HaMelech. David felt the stress and the courage that they needed, and the Kosh Baruch Hu helped them. Chazak v'nit chazak, ba'adameinu v'adarei Elokeinu, and our Mishnah, when it wants to bring us examples of people who were inferior to their might and strength of the armies surrounding them, they were really surrounded by strong armies. Both wars of David HaMelech. One David as a young man, young boy, who has the courage to fight Goliath. And the other time is when David and his armies fight Shovach, but Shovach like brings that whole parsha together. And the conclusion is that when you go to war, the question is not who's stronger. That's not the only question. I was in tanks. Anybody else here was in tanks? No, I'm the only one. Okay. We would they would say in the Chela Shiryan, you know what they would say? The Lo HaTank Menatzeach. You know who wins? Nobody knows? Ha'adam shebatank menatzeach. That's what they would always say. Our advantage is that we believe in what we're doing. Our advantage is they were fighting for a right cause. Our advantage is that we're fighting in the name of God. That's our advantage, not that we're necessarily stronger. And I think today you all see the Mesiras Nefesh of our soldiers. That's the story. It's not how many soldiers we have. It's who we are. And that's what the Mishnah is talking about. The Mishnah says that the story of the armies of the Goyim are stories of they believed in being strong or weak. The strongest one are those who are going to win. And the Torah turns to us and it says that's not the story. The story is not how strong you are, but how right you are. Now, I want to make it clear again. It doesn't mean you don't have to fight, okay? It doesn't mean you don't have to build an army, okay? I mean, those who think will just pray, you need an army. Yoav went to the army. David had an army. David fought Goliath, and we're fighting too. The all parsha of Kohen Meshuach Milchamas, people fighting. He's going to help you fighting, but you have to realize, don't only look at the numbers of the soldiers, of the power of the army. You have to look at more things, and that's what the Mishnah continues. And let's try to interpret it together. Okay, let's go back. Here we are. Okay. Ki Hashem Elokechem holech imachem ilachem. We're going back to the continuation of the pasuk. The Kodesh Baruch Hu is going with you. So look what they say. Ze machane Aaron. You know what that means? That the ark who comes to the camp of the soldiers, the ark is how the Shechina goes with us. Meaning when we say Hashem Elokechem holech imachem, God is going within the camp of Israel. It's not only a metaphor, not only because Baruch Hu has a Shechina above us, but it had an actual expression. What was the actual expression? That they would bring the ark to the camp of the army of Am Yisrael. And as we know, the Shechina is on top of the ark. So when you bring the Aron, you bring the ark, you bring the Shechina with you. And we have learned, I mean, those who have heard Kriyas Torah, okay, but last Shabbos, I hope if you didn't hear Kriyas Torah because they closed the shul, that at least you did Shnai Mikra, okay? You should do that, okay? If you miss laning, read the Parsha, okay? Well, I hope that this Shabbos, I don't know exactly what they're going to decide in the Vad, but I hope there'll be an opportunities to have minyanim, if not everybody in shul, to have Sifrei Torah in the street minyanim, which are now legal, okay? So all I'll say is we read Vahi bin so Aaron. So what do we say about the ark? Vahi bin so Aaron, V'yomer Moshe Kuma Hashem v'yafutzu oivecha v'yanusa mesanecha mipanecha. This is exactly what's described over here. But I think it's a good idea to read together now one episode in Tanakh where Jews brought the Aron and it didn't work. It has to deal with Beit Shemesh, as you all know, right? So what am I hinting to? Shmuel Aleph, Perek Hey, Perek Dalet, okay? So let's go there. But before, I want to show you something in Sefer Dvarim, okay? The Parsha of Kohen Meshuach Milchama, he gives us a promise. What does it promise us? Kosh Baruch Hu will help you, no matter how strong the other armies are. But you know something very dangerous about people being sure that the Kosh Baruch Hu promised them something, not realizing that the Kosh Baruch Hu also has expectations from us. I want to show you a dialogue between Parsha of Kohen Meshuach Milchama that we're learning, and a later part of Sefer Dvarim. Uh, in Dvarim, just a moment. I want to share it with you, okay? We're going to Dvarim, Perek Chav Dalet, okay? Let's see it together. Okay, here we go. Look what it says over here. It's Chav Gimel, I'm sorry. Just a moment. Yeah, it's Chav Gimel. Ki tetzei machane al oivecha v'nishmarta mikol davar ra. When you go forth to an army camp against your enemies, you have to keep yourself from evil things. And look what the Torah describes. You know what you're careful about? Ki yevecha ish asher lo yeh tahor mikra laila. If there's somebody who's not clean because of a nocturnal emission, so he has to leave the camp. You have to make sure the camp has tahara. And look what else they describe here. You have to make sure there are toilets. V'yad tiyeh lecha michutz lamachaneh. You should have a place outside the camp where people, when they have to go to the toilet, they will leave the camp and keep the camp clean. Yatei tiyeh lecha lazenecha. You have to go with a spade among your weapons that you can cover tzeyatecha. Okay, and what? How does the Torah explain this? כי האדוני אלוהיך מתהלך בקרב מחניך להצילך ולתת אויביך לפניך, והיה מחניך קדוש, ולא יראה בך ערוות דבר ושב מאחוריך. I want to explain this. We are promised here, השם אלוקיכם הולך עמכם להילחם לכם עם אויביכם. That's what we're promised, right? But you know what these psukim say? You have to make sure that your machaneh, your camp, is holy. So the Kodesh Baruch Hu should want to be in your camp. But if your camp is not holy, you know what's going to happen? If he chas v'shalom sees by you something unclean, ervat davar, v'shav ma'achorecha, he'll leave you. So what the Torah is really saying to us, it's a very important message. The message is that the Kodesh Baruch Hu goes with our camp, but we have to make the camp a place he would want to be in that camp. Now, I'll just add, you might find it surprising that of all things in the world, the Torah had to talk about toilets and going to the bathroom. Now, the commentator who really understood it deeply is the Ramban. And if any of you were like me in combat, I think you know what I'm talking about. Jerry, were you in the army, Jerry? The
I was in
Ramban
the army,
says
but I
when
wasn't
people go to an army
in the.
camp, they like lose the human code. That's what they lose. You know, we as humans, we have codes which differentiate us from from the world of living, from animals. We're natural beings, but we're civilized and we have ethics and we have a Tzelem Elokim. Now, many times when people go to a war, to an army camp, they lose that code. Just take into account that soldiers are trained to kill. I know it's they kill enemies, but once you are trained to kill, it includes in it also losing some codes. It's where do you sleep? I mean, we have like ways we organize ourselves as a society, and you could lose very central parts of that. It's how you talk about women, how you treat others. And what the Ramban basically says is we have a tendency, it's a human tendency to lose that human code. And one of those things has to do with bathrooms, meaning, do you control yourself? Do you keep human dignity? When I read these psukim, I always think of my Rosh Hashiva in high school. Maybe some of you have heard of him. His name was Rabbi Yabina Zecher Tzadik Livracha. He was he learned in the Mir Yeshiva in Lithuania, in Mir, and he was a student of the great Mashgiach Rabbi Yerucham Levovitz. And one of the major messages he would transmit to us, we were in high school, we were 14 to 18, okay, was to be a mensch, to be with dignity. He would always say, if you take care of yourself as a mensch, like if your bed is made in the morning, and so then you learn better, he always talked about that, okay? And what the Torah is basically saying is, before talking about Judaism, before talking about mitzvahs, I don't know, saying Tillim, you know what the Torah is talking about? Remain human, with human tzelem Elokim, with dignity. Don't be an animal when you go to the army. And then the Shekhinah will come to you. I think I've told this story in the past to the community, so I ask you for your forgiveness if you've heard it from me before. But I want to tell you, I don't remember it myself, but I've been told the story by those who were present. When the Yom Kippur War broke out, I was 9 years old. We were the family in the yeshiva in Alon Shvut. Now, there was no siren there on Yom Kippur that year because it was like middle of nowhere. Okay, Gush Etzion then was not what it's today. But they knew in yeshiva that a war broke out, and the boys in yeshiva, many of them were soldiers. So they came with an army car to take on Yom Kippur boys to go straight to the front line to the fighting. And the driver said, "Look, I have to pick up some people in Kiryat Arba. So you know what? On my way back from Kiryat Arba, I'll pick you up." So he gave them some time, not a lot of time. So those boys, they gathered together and they davened and they got organized. One of them was the Baal. They davened Nila much earlier than the right time because they finished their davenings then. Okay, they had to go up. He was the boy who was later killed in the war, Reb Moshe Tal, the son of the Shofet Tal. And when the commander came and they went on the army car, so they described, I heard it from people, suddenly they see the Rosh Hashiva. I don't know if you can go through your head what it's like saying goodbye to your students who are going to fight a war. Some of them didn't come back also. You know what? They saw him running and saying, "You forgot something. I have to bring you one last thing to say goodbye." You know what he ran with? He ran with a pile of toilet paper. That's how a Jew goes to fight a war. You remain with human dignity. And what the Torah is really saying to us is when a Jew wants the Shekhinah to be with him, he has to make sure that he lives a life, that the camp is organized in a way that the Shekhinah wants to be there. And it's a central test of how you run an army camp. How do you talk? How do you relate to each other? So what I would like to conclude is we have to give a look, okay? Uh, I'm going back to shiur, okay? We'll give a look, okay? To the one time they brought the Aron to a camp of Am Yisrael, and that is, as I mentioned, in Shmuel Aleph, Perek Daled. Okay, let's see the story. The story is that there was a war between the Plishtim and Am Yisrael in Afek, Even Haezer. That's the area today of Rosh Ha'ain. And what happened in the first round of the battle? The Plishtim have won the battle, and they killed 4,000 of the soldiers of Am Yisrael. And the Am came back to the camp, and they said, "How do we solve this problem? How can we win the war in the second round?" So what did they do? They said, we'll bring the ark, we'll bring the Aron. That's what they did. Now look how their words echo the parsha of Kori Meshuach Milchama. ניקחה אלינו משילה את ארון ברית אדוני, ויבוא בקרבנו, ויושיענו מכף אויבינו, ממש. יבוא בקרבנו is השם אלוקיך מתהלך בקרב מחניך, and יושיענו is להושיע אתכם. It's the same verb, the same root, okay? So that's what they did. They went to Shiloh, they brought the Aron, and how is the Aron described? That the Shekhinah is on the Aron. Aron Brit Hashem Tzvaot Yoshev HaKruvim. Now here we have a good hint of why it didn't work. You know who were the Aaron? You know who were them? Chofni and Pinchas. Do you remember how Chofni and Pinchas ran their priesthood, their kuhuna? Do you remember? Remember? Instead of being the servants of God, they used their kuhuna for their own benefit, for their own good. They would grab the meat from the people who would come. They would sleep with the woman who came. They would say, like some lo aleinu, be careful of those people. These mystical sometimes. One of they use the woman who come to them for advice. So you want to bring the Aron, and those who bring the Aron are those who violate the name of God, who are Mechalel Shem Shamayim. But like they thought that it's like magic. I mean, the Aron is like in Shiloh, there's an ideology that the Aron is above everything. So, just bring the Aron, we solve the problem. And if you bring the Aron with a culture of Chofni or Pinchas, it doesn't work. Okay, but look what happens when it comes. They're sure they solve the issue. It comes to the camp. There's a great noise, and the Plishtim hear the noise. And when they say, "What happened?" and they realize what happened, the Aron came. And you know who realized the Aron doesn't work automatically? Not Am Yisrael. You know who realized it? The Plishtim. What happens? Oy lanu, they said the Plishtim. Lo הייתה כזאת אתמול, שלשום. Wow. Oy lanu, who's going to save us from these great gods? And the Plishtim, what do they say? Hitchazku ve'yu la'anashim. The Plishtim realized that the real story is, who are we? What people are we? That's what the Torah is really saying to us. Kosh Baruch Hu will help us, but we have to be deserved for the Kosh Baruch Hu to want to be with us. So that's for today. We finished the Mishnah. That you want to share tomorrow too? Now, I want to
Yes,
say
please.
things start going